Great. Good afternoon to all those in Central Europe and African time zones. And good morning to Mr. Desha in the Bay Area, popularly known as the Silicon Valley. And for those of you joining us from the Far East in China, I know good evening. Welcome to the second episode of the Decade of the Drone webinar series, which is brought to you by our sponsors, ACSO Consulting and Commercial Drones. And thanks to our host, Johannesburg Metropolis Department. My name is Victor Khadebe, and I'm the Program Director for the Mzansi Drone Accelerator. We help drone startups to integrate drone technology in key sectors like agriculture, built environment, infrastructure, security, etc. One of our startups is focusing on today's topic, which is public order policing. Now that I've paid the bills, let's get started. In the words of the retired California Police Chief, Jim Davis, if we were 10 to 20 years behind technology, it really didn't matter at the time. But today, if you are 10 to 20 days behind in your technology, the bad guys are getting way ahead of you. What images does the word drone conjure up in your mind? Our experience is that people we meet would go for one extreme, which means the toys, and to the other extreme, which is the weapons of mass destruction. In the minds of the latter group, a drone is a large robotic bird of prey that is lurking high up in the sky, waiting to pounce and inflict maximum damage, which includes often taking innocent lives in the name of collateral damage. For this reason, some organizations have had to use the term unmanned aerial vehicle, or UAV, because of what the word drone has been associated with. The middle ground is that of commercial drones and humanitarian drones that have been doing good work by saving lives through missions like search and rescue. We have seen some of these drones helping with COVID-19 and containment measures by sanitizing public places, and they will soon be sanitizing sports stadiums as we get back to enjoying our beautiful game. The use of drones in commercial application has the potential to dramatically and digitally transform several industries, and in the process change our attitudes and behaviors regarding their impact on our daily lives. The rise of adoption of drone technology challenges our traditional convictions of safety, security, privacy, ownership, liability, and regulation. With their ability to collect tons of data, drones are challenging our thinking and how we feel about our physical environment. They are also burdened with the perception as being surveillance equipment, and their commercial use has been criticized by both individuals and rights groups. A drone initiative of the Connecticut Police Department to monitor social distancing was stopped recently after an outcry from the privacy rights group. Again, a judge in Paris has also put a stop to this practice following an outcry an action brought by the French Human Rights League. This is a thorny issue that has begun to raise eyebrows in this country of ours with comments like, hey, Big Brother is at it again. My question today is, in this drones and privacy debate, is this: are privacy and data protection a drone tech problem, or are they a broader technology problem? How come we are happy with Google and Apple when they help, in inverted commas, trace the movements of positive COVID-19 cases, and then protest when the same is done with the use of drones? Is it because Google and Apple are doing it quietly and often with your consent? Or is it because you do not know how they use your personal data? You may have questions of your own. Please hit us with those questions by posting them in the Q&A below. In our briefing of the speakers yesterday, we decided that in this webinar, there will be no question that will have a no comment response. We have declared this era the decade of the drones, and no level of lockdown seems to be stopping this technology whose time has come. In our last episode, we dealt with the integration of drone technology in private security industry. Today, we are diving deeper into public order policing. Just to give you some stats in the rate at which drones have been adopted in the US. According to a report by the Center for Study of Drones at the Bard College in the US, in 2017, there were no less than 347 public safety agencies that had adopted drone technology. by March of 2020, this number had risen to 1,578, a whopping increase of 454%. Leading use cases are 70% law enforcement, 20% fire and rescue, 10% in emergencies. According to a Drone U blog, up to 90% of these drones are made in China and mostly are DJI products. Donald Trump is about to sign an executive order that will have an effect of banning the use of all Chinese manufactured drones by federal agencies, supposedly under the pretext of data protection. We can only wish him good luck. Today, we have a great lineup of speakers that include the elephant in the room of this industry, which is the South African civil aviation industry. You will also hear from academia, drones for good and tech for good. And the long arm of the law, Ingalo Yomthetho, Abakwasidlodlo, is also with us. Without much further ado, let's welcome our first speaker, Mr. David Lekota, our host, the Johannesburg Metropolis Department, who will set the scene for this great gathering. Mr. Lekota is a director in JMPD responsible for the following portfolio of auxiliary services and security services. He has worked at Business Against Crime, SA, has been responsible for organized crime, vehicle crime, and non-ferrous metal for 7 years, and he returned back to the public sector to join the JMPD. Mr. Lekota is a professional, has a professional diploma in licensing, postgraduate diploma in business management and public safety management, and also he holds a BA honors degree. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you our host, Mr. David Lekota, to set the scene for us. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Program Director. Good afternoon, colleague from abroad, South Africa. Johannesburg Metropolis Department was established in 2001, and the purpose was, it came from the Constitution. The square meter of Johannesburg, as we speak, it's one of the biggest metro. We think it's 1.6 billion square meter. That is current, and we've got a complete 7,540 officers on the ground. And the vehicle population, we're talking of 1.4 thousand vehicles that we operating on different areas. We've got the freeways, we've got SPUs, we've got K9. We also have all specialized units around Johannesburg. We've got BMU, that is business management unit, that deal with our informal traders. We do have operations. We do have tactical that deals with the escorts and freeways. We do have IOC, that's an intelligent integrated operating center, where our computers, our drone will be sitting in the future. Program Director, Johannesburg is one of the biggest in terms of it's the economic hub as well of Gauteng and also of South Africa. As you know, that we've got a lot of mines around here as well, Gauteng being Johannesburg being the city. What I'm going to elaborate much more is the issue of taking cognizance of the futuristic technology in drones to enhance law enforcement, especially in security and surveillance as law enforcement. Program Director, we do have now and then public applying for match-use demonstrations. We can actually use drones to monitor and control the number of people or demonstrators within the city. We will be using our drones on our highways, monitoring accident as well as land invasion. You know, as you can see now, we're sitting here because of the COVID-19. We have recently experienced a lot of people taking land without application, without approval. But we have tested the drones as to way of say, before we go there, at least let's have this as a mechanism to enhance law enforcement. Of course, we are also looking at the security. We do have a lot of properties around, facilities around Johannesburg. Together with South African police, we interact on intelligence areas. We also work with the police within. But let me focus much on the COVID. What is Johannesburg Operating Center, Joint Operating Center? That is we currently managing COVID in South Africa. Yes, of course, Program Director, we could have used drones to follow some of the people that are actually COVID victims. It is a challenge. It is a huge challenge. We have further extended this particular area where we introduce our specialists in our units, specialized units, especially during accidents, especially during events like your FNB, when we have big events like soccer stadiums, we can deploy drones. We see drones as our future in the law enforcement space. Let me say, furthermore, with our IOC, our IOC, we've got a dedicated unit that deals with our central business district, inner cities, CBD. When communities are attacked or robbed, we've got cameras everywhere. But I think in an enhancement way, we are going to use the drone so that we can send them first before we respond to other issues. Like if there's a robbery, armed robbery, or cash in transit, monitors. You have seen previously in South Africa with the universities with the fees down, no fees thing. And it created a problem because we could not have the system to monitor the movements of individuals. As you were aware as well that, for example, when we had the incidents then in 2012 of the Marikana issue, if we could have had the drone, we could have resolved a lot of things. Like in Ellis Park as well. Ellis Park, where we had our soccer fans stampede, we could have used the drone to reduce the risk of stampedes. But program director saying that we are also having a departments that are transporting our people like Reavaya, Metro buses. They specialized dedicated routes that are along our routes, our arterials. What we do is that we intending to utilize the drone as well to monitor the routes because of the violence that we have experienced previously, especially from our counterpart taxi industry at some instances. Luckily now, because the government, national government and provinces supported us, including South African police services supported us, we managed to win, but we still need technology as to enhance our services. There is an area of universities as well. We've got a lot of universities around Johannesburg. We are also integrating their camera systems into IOC. Program Director, I don't know how much time you've given me.
You've got 2 minutes.
2 minutes to finish. The other issue is just for us to say we need to establish a multi-agency mechanism with the private sector as well, because we need to increase our force, multi-force, as to reduce the crime within the city of Johannesburg.
Mr. Likota, thank you so much. And I know Johannesburg Metropolis was when the metros were formed in 2000, and JMPD was the first metro police department to be formed as it is now. And we've seen some of the metro cities have since followed suit, and most or just about all of them have got metro police departments. And thank you very much, sir. We're going to come back to you through the panel discussion. So don't think you are done. You still have a lot to respond to. And thank you very much for your input. Ladies and gentlemen, going to our second speaker, who is our keynote, and we are grateful that we have Mr. Romeo Dersher. He is Swiss, and he has moved to San Jose in California to work in the NASA space mission. After almost 13 years of working in NASA Solar Dynamics Observatory, doing project management and education, public outreach, and social media, Mr. Döscher joined DJI as the Director of Education. He advises and educates organizations, industries, and government and individuals on beneficial use, incorporation, and safe integration of unmanned aerial systems. Mr. Döscher was named one of the 25 most influential people in the drone industry by Commercial UAV Organization, and one of 7 visionaries in public safety. Mr. Döscher is a published author and a very keen aerial photographer. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Döscher to do his keynote presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Victor. Good afternoon and good evening. I am very honored to be on this esteemed panel here. It's wonderful to see such a diverse group. And my first visit to South Africa was only a few months ago in December of 2019. But because of the current pandemic situation, it feels like 10 years ago. But I have very fond memories and I'm very happy to be back and hopefully can share some information with all of you. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen because I have a presentation for you. And we're going to go through that presentation. So just give me one quick second. And here we go. So as mentioned, my name is Romeo Döscher. I'm the Senior Director of Public Safety Integration here at DJI. And over the last almost 6 years, even though I started in education, my focus really was to start figuring out how can drones help public safety. Now, today, we're going to take a look at the overview of drones in public safety here in the US. I'm going to talk about a couple of incidents where I deployed to, especially in natural disasters. Here in California, we have had quite a few very large-scale wildfires. And we're also going to talk a little bit about how drones have been helping in public safety, including some of the COVID-19 responses. So let's dig right into it. As Victor mentioned, the adoption of drones in public safety here in the United States has really taken off. Not to make fun of the term taking off, but this is really what has been happening. And this is the most accurate number that is out there. The number in reality is much higher because there are a lot of departments that are utilizing drones that may have not reported the information. So definitely these early adopters in 2015 and 2016 are the foundation of where we are today because they figured out how this technology is helping them, keeping not only the communities more safe, but also their officers or their firefighters or their search and rescue personnel. Victor also mentioned that DJI has a very large footprint in this vertical. And that is not just because the technology that we produce is not only affordable, but also extremely capable, but it's also because we have been working for over 5 years very closely with public safety, trying to understand what the needs are and coming up with solutions. Now, it is important to look at the role of a drone as a collection device, because that's in the majority of cases what it is. We're seeing drone deliveries, but that's still a very small percentage. So we, on the data capture side, we have a drone, we have a sensor, which can be a camera, and we have the ability to either fly the drone manually or pre-program it. What we're then doing is we're taking data, we're taking an image, we may be taking an air sample, whatever it is, but then with analytic software, either on board or on the ground, we're trying to get the data that we're looking for. And that data then helps us to make better decisions. The whole goal is that between these steps, we shorten the amount of time it takes so that we get very good and actionable data. Meaning, if we have a live view of a fire incident, the fire incident commander can make much better decisions versus if he has to wait for the images to be brought to him and then look at it, and there is time in between. Now, Looking at disaster response, that's something that with not only our environment changing, but also with population growing, will impact and is impacting us more and more. And drones have a very important component and piece in the disaster response. For one, it provides the live situational awareness on the ground, or it can also be streamed to an incident command. We have the ability to utilize it for search and rescue or search and recovery right during the event. And then obviously post-flight data analytics is also very important, especially when we do mapping of certain areas. And I'm going to show you a few examples. Now, that immediate situation awareness is so important because when we're driving up to an incident scene, this is usually what we see. We see it on a ground level and we see that something is happening, but we may not have the full picture. Just getting above that ground level gives us the ability to get much more data. We have the ability of a camera on a tripod in 3D. We can maneuver the camera to any different point and then look at this incident scene, and that helps to really make better, smarter, and safer decisions. Now I'm going to talk about one of my deployments here, and that was in 2018, November 2018, the campfire in Paradise, California. It burned about 619 square kilometers, and close to 19,000 structures were destroyed, and it became the most destructive wildfire in California history, with over $17 billion in damages, and unfortunately also 85 lives lost. We went up there, this was our third wildfire deployment in a little bit over a year, and we went up there with 16 public safety agencies comprised of law enforcement, fire, and I was part of a special task force leading some of these teams. And our purpose was to initially visualize the impact of the fire and do search and recovery tasks. Now, we ultimately then also created the largest multi-rotor map that was ever created, over 71,000 images in over 500 flights. And people often ask me, well, why did you use drones? Why didn't you use a fixed wing if you had such a large area? And the answer is very clear, because we still had a lot of smoke in the air. The fire lines were not too far away from us. We couldn't fly beyond 400 feet, 120 meters. Otherwise, we couldn't even see through the smoke. So we had to utilize technology that was able to fly at about 90 meters above ground. And that's extremely difficult to map with a fixed wing or a helicopter. We created a variety of different data sets, and I'm going to give you an example of those. Here we can see 3 different data sets in one that was made available to the public within less than 70 hours. The underlining area we 2D mapped with the drones. Then the orange pins, we did some geo-referenced videos along major roads, and the blue pins, we did 360-degree interactive imagery, so we could see certain areas in much more details. And here is what it looks like. We have these 360-degree pins and images that you can click on, and then immediately you have the ability to move around. This process of gathering the data and making it available in less than 20 minutes. So it's very real time and allows for very quick situational awareness. And because it is in fairly high resolution, we have the ability to zoom in and zoom out and get additional information. So this is one of the data products that we quickly were able to make available to the residents and then also to city planning. Another one is that geo-referenced video, where we have the drone video on the left and a map on the right, and it shows on the map where the drone was at that given time and its flight path. Because after a natural disaster, oftentimes landmarks are not recognizable, and it's difficult otherwise to figure out where am I actually looking at. By doing this side-by-side view, it really helps get situational awareness. And then the third product, which was the main product, is that really high resolution mapping of the destruction of paradise, and with the ability to do a slider to do before and after, we can really showcase the impact of that particular wildfire or natural disaster on communities. And this data set really to this day is still being used. We're a year and a half past the wildfire. It's still being used by insurance companies, city planning, and it's an extremely valuable data set. And as you can see, the resolution is extremely well. So we have the Google Earth view or satellite view on the left, and we can still zoom in on our drone data and get very detailed information. So extremely helpful for a lot of different processes during the disaster, but also post-disaster. Obviously, when you have these large-scale incidents, you want to get that actionable data quick. And so by utilizing machine learning, we programmed software code to detect burned or destroyed versus undestroyed homes. And if you are able to quickly fly a community and then at the end of the flight immediately get initial data on how many homes were destroyed, how many vehicles were burned, that has tremendous helpful impacts because it's a time saver, it's a Morse multiplier. Traditionally, you have to send ground crews that walk every street and look at every property, and that takes time. When you don't have a lot of resources available, especially when you have a disaster in the size of 19,000 homes being destroyed. Now, let's take a look at some other areas where drones in public safety make a big impact. Hazardous materials. Oftentimes, a lot of dangerous goods are being transported, and that can be gas, that can be fuels, and there can be an incident. And now we need to have better situational awareness. By utilizing drones, we are able to first get more information before we send people into a hot zone, suiting them up, having them walk potentially a half a kilometer to the hot zone. They have limited amount of air available. They come back, they're tired, another team has to go. We can utilize different technologies to gather that initial size up of the incident. Here is a real life hazmat incident that happened just a few weeks ago. A tanker trucker in the background had a crash on a freeway. The fire department utilized drones first to not only get an aerial view of what is happening, but also landed a drone fairly close to the incident with some measuring devices to see what is the gas off of the situation and monitor the environment. A collision investigation, this is another very, very helpful use case because it has a direct impact on communities, on everyday people. Because when we have incidents and accidents on roads, and roads have to be closed so that investigations can properly happen, that takes time. And utilizing drones, again, for mapping purposes, not only protects people on the ground that don't have to be in a dangerous environment of a road, but it speeds up the process, and it speeds it up by anywhere from 70 to 50%, and that is a huge economical benefit. If we can open up roads quicker, even if it's just half quicker than before, it has a huge impact. People can get home earlier, people can get to work earlier, goods can be transported in a faster way and get to the destination faster than before. Those are hugely helpful pieces. Looking at explosive ordnance disposal, something that we don't often talk about it. It's nothing new. Robotics are already being utilized, but as you can see, these robotic units are large, they're cumbersome, and they have a disadvantage because you're seeing for certain things, again, from a one level perspective. And if you as an operator have to pick something up, open up something, it can be very difficult to maneuver these robotics. So police departments and EOD teams have started to utilize drones to get a second view, to not only track the robotics unit to the location, but then to land the drone next to it and utilize the drone view as an indicator of how close are we to this object. And you can see here they're operating side by side. One side on the left is the view from the robotics unit, and on the right is the view from the drone on the ground, giving a different perspective, allowing the operator of the robotic unit to maneuver and work much more effectively and efficiently. Now, obviously, search and rescue is another very helpful use case and a tool that has made a tremendous impact. To date, we're trying to keep track of validated stories where drones have helped to rescue individuals. And we're close to 400 people that have been rescued thanks to the drone. And here's a very good example out of the UK. Lincolnshire Police Department, they had a winter night with a rural accident. An individual was thrown out of the vehicle. They couldn't find the individual. They utilized a drone with thermal camera capabilities, and they had to fly the area multiple times because the victim was thrown out of the vehicle into a ditch, and they couldn't immediately find the person. But then when they did find the person, after about 12 minutes of flight time, they found it about 160 meters away in a ditch and were able to send help to the individual, treat the individual, get it to hospital, and ultimately save that individual's life. Now, what is very important, and Victor alluded to this, before deploying a drone, not only in disaster deployment, but for any sort of public safety deployment, there has to be some thinking be done from the department. And We Robotics put together a flow chart that has a lot of really good information, and I have a link to that information in my later on slides. The key is to properly identify a solution and also think about its outcomes and benefits. Just because we have a drone doesn't mean we need to use it. Perhaps we already have a more established technology that can be used. How does the community react to the drone? What does the media think of the drone? All of these things have to be thought through so that we can better understand the outcome and the benefits. In around 2013 and 2014, the Humanitarian Drone Code of Conduct was developed by you aviators as well as We Robotics with 70 entities around the world. DJI was part of the discussions. I helped with the Humanitarian Drone Code of Conduct, and it really talks about the importance of thinking things through, and then also letting your stakeholders know why you're using a drone. Transparency, extremely important. And then the best practices in humanitarian drone missions is another very helpful document that I will make available shortly. But that flow chart really is simple. It's in essence, if you can answer a couple, 3 questions and get to that orange box, then you should or you can expect a positive outcome of your drone operation. If you don't get to that orange box, you may have to do a little bit more homework. You may have to talk to more stakeholders. You may have to firm up your policies or standard operating procedures, or there may be better technology already available to do what you're trying to do. Now, looking at COVID-19 responses, we've seen a variety of use cases from across the globe. And another thing we need to into consideration is what works in one region of the globe does not necessarily also work in a different region. And that is very important because we have different cultures, we have different ways of thinking, and we also have different ways of reacting. So therefore, again, the proper thinking before the deployment is a key component. Proper planning and thinking the entire strategy through is a key component in success. Chula Vista Police is here in California, Southern California, very close to the Mexican border. California, unfortunately, has a very high density of homeless population, and that's an at-risk population as is, with COVID-19 even more so. They have homeless communities that are very hard to reach. They're in canyons, they're in outdoor environments that are not easy to get to. Getting there means having to hike down hills, potentially dangerous environments. So they decided to create staged service locations at those canyon exits where individuals could come and get free medical checkups, additional services, and they utilize drones with a speaker to share the message in a couple of different languages to allow the homeless population to know that they're here, that they have service stations to please come and pick up free food, personal hygiene kits, face masks, and also get a medical screening. They started doing that once a week, and they keep track of the impact. And the very first time they did it, they covered about 8 square miles. They reached 26 camps. They offered services to 16 people. 3 of them decided to take advantage of it. It took 3 hours. Otherwise, it would have taken 2 days. And who knows what could have happened during those 2 days. You could have had somebody on the team fall down a ravine, injure, get exposed to COVID-19, or even potentially bring COVID-19 to that already at-risk population. If you have a QR scanner or your iPhone or iPad or smart device, you can take your camera, scan this. It will give you a video of this particular scenario, and Chula Vista continues to utilize this technology to reach out to its population. Fremont Fire, also here in California, they used the drone to help with the planning of 2 COVID-19 testing sites. They were concerned about long vehicle and walk-up lines, so they wanted to do proper planning so that the city traffic would not be as impeded, as well as ensuring that walk-up lines would be done in a safe manner to all involved. The drone monitored the line of traffic. They got vehicle counts for future planning. They documented activities to improve the efficiency of the testing site, but they also utilized the speaker to give estimated wait times and other information to people either on the walk-up line or in the vehicle line down the roads. And as you can see, here is an image of the walk-up line. They wanted to also ensure that people were keeping proper distances. Looking at the vehicle line, how it's snaking down roads was extremely helpful. And obviously then keeping an eye on the actual testing site was an additional benefit to the department to serve as many of its residents as possible. Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office, they needed to pre-plan a field hospital, so they utilized the drone technology to create, in essence, these 2D and 3D interactive maps, those orthomosaic maps, to ahead of time document the ingress and egress points of the facility. They use drones also inside to fly through before the hospital was opened to again outline ingress, egress points, other points of interest in case there is an incident, in case there is a fire, there is anything that could potentially come up, that the information was already available. And then during the use of this field hospital, they also controlled the parameters of the actual field hospital to ensure that there are no people trying to get in or trying to get out, to better contain the environment. Here is what this orthomosaic data set looked like. Definitely very, very helpful. As I had mentioned, there is the Humanitarian Code of Conduct and also the best practices in humanitarian drone missions. And if you again use your smart device and go to this QR code, it will get you that data set, those documents. Very, very helpful, something that the community will continue to improve upon, as this is not just something you write once and then you let it be. The more we deploy, the more we learn, the more we also have to ensure that we do it properly. And so these documents are constantly being reviewed and updated. We have also put together a COVID-19 response use case document. This document is part of our disaster relief program here in the United States, and it outlines some of the lessons learned by departments but also gives a little bit of an insight into how other areas have utilized drones, either successfully or we don't know yet, because a lot of these use cases are brand new. We have never in our lifetimes gone through a pandemic like this. And utilizing new technologies, that's an unknown. We're learning as we go. And that's why it is so important to document the lessons learned, the best practices, so that if this happens again, hopefully not at a scale like this, but if it does happen again, we're much better prepared to utilize the technology and also manage the outcome more effectively. And in closing, this is an ecosystem. This is not just the drone. The drone is one piece, one component. It is used to either gather helpful situational awareness. It is used to potentially provide information through the air, or also to do drone delivery. This is still in its early stages. We're learning as a community, and it goes much beyond than just the drone. There are other technologies that help, that enable public safety and other verticals to do a job safer, more effectively, and get better results. There's still lots of questions, there's still a lot of concerns that we are tackling as an industry, but also as a community. And that's why I truly appreciate everyone who has tuned in today to not only learn more about this, but also ask questions, because transparency, not only in public safety, but also in the drone industry, is of key essence. And this is it from my side.
Romeo, thank you so much, Mr. Descher, and what an insightful presentation. And one takeaway from me for now is that just because we have the technology doesn't mean that we have to use it. You know the saying of if everything is if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and that's probably what some people think about drones. And we must agree that we can't do everything. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Mr. Rene Peter Massoon, who's going to demonstrate and show us one of his toys, okay? Because I know when people talk about drones, they sometimes say, this thing is cool. You know, teenage boys like this piece of equipment, they think it's cool. Mr. Massoon is a commercial pilot license holder with Boeing 737 type rating. He's passionate about manned aviation, but has now fallen in love with an unmanned industry. An outspoken ambassador of the 4IR, particularly in the segment of drone technology and its benefits and how it forms part of disruptive technology advancement. His current role is sales manager at Commercial Drones, which involve drone solutions, innovation, operation support, disruptive technologies, and Mr. Massoon, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Just to give a short reintroduction, my name is Rene Peter Massoon. You can call me Rene. I am the sales manager at a company called Commercial Drones, one of the sponsors of this here webinar. My role primarily entails providing drone solutions as opposed to just selling drones. These solutions are structured, of course, with drones as the main component, and with the associated accessories, specialized sensors, cameras, various software platforms, and even in some cases, customized road vehicles, serving as mobile ground or control stations. I'm also fortunate enough to have operational and real-life experience with the utilization of drones in security and surveillance and reconnaissance. In some cases, these have involved public order, law enforcement, national and state security entities. Naturally, in my role, I submerge myself in end-user operations to better understand objectives and requirements that require the effective usage of drones, of course. So my talk will encompass particular drone platforms, as Program Director alluded to, that are designed for public order policing and related operations. In fact, I have with me here a more familiar platform that is currently being utilized by various entities around the world involving public policing. Our law enforcement officials might be familiar with it as well. It is the DJI MAVIC 2 Enterprise. This unit, of course, is referred to as the dual because it has a normal visible light sensor and an infrared sensor on one gimbal. What you see here is a speaker mounted at the top as well. It also comes with a spotlight, of course, for low light operations or operations in dark environments. And of course, behind me or next to me, I have the much anticipated, innovative, game-changing platform, the DJI Matrice 300 RTK with a ZenMuse H20 series mounted. The ZenMuse H20 series was launched in conjunction with the drone. It is the latest enterprise range product from DJI. I'm very honored to be one of the first on the continent, or we are as a company honored to be one of the first on the continent to have this model in our possession. And in fact, we have a fleet already available. It is, of course, aimed at assisting public order and law enforcement entities to carry out safe and efficient operations. And it is immediately noticeable, of course, between the two drones, the size difference. Therefore, this, along with other features of these two drones, that one can imagine that they are able to carry out different functions. I will now be sharing a presentation with you, and the purpose of this is to briefly give an overview of the ecosystem of our organization. Second. Here we go. Just to give an ecosystem of our organization and how it caters to various facets of drone solutions. It's also to reaffirm the capabilities and functions of the MAVIC enterprise and to highlight the new features and capabilities that come with the new DJI Matrice 300 RTK. Commercial drones is under a holding company called UDH Group. I'll go a bit more into that in the next slide. My contact details are at the bottom right hand of the screen, which will be shared on the last slide as well. To give you an overview of our group of companies, I have explained to you that Commercial Drones is the sales division arm of the company. We are also one of a handful of DJI Enterprise Range drones distributors on the continent. In the bottom left-hand corner, Advanced Aerial is our operations division, currently engaged in daily and nightly operations involving security and surveillance, and caters mainly to the mining industry, amongst others. To the right of that, we have a South African Civil Aviation Authority registered aviation training organization called RPAS Training Academy. Also a very experienced organization in terms of offering remote pilot's license courses for multi-rotor drones and for fixed wing drones as well. Also one of a handful of entities that offers beyond visual line of sight training, and I think that is actually self-explanatory. In the bottom right-hand corner, we have Drone Ops, which is our RPAS operating certificate holder, also which is issued by the South African Civil Aviation Authority, one of a handful of a few companies that is certified to operate drones commercially within the country. And lastly, in the top left-hand corner, we have a DroneCon, the platform on which we are able to host this webinar on. Just to reiterate, as I mentioned, we are a DJI Enterprise Range drone dealer and therefore to a certain extent represent DJI and its various products. Of course, we are dealing with public order policing, public safety and security. What you see on the first slide there is the MAVIC 2 Enterprise, another version of the one that I showed you earlier on that I have with me. This one has a zoom camera as opposed to a dual sensor and also mounted with a speaker. This, of course, is for crowd control, close action scenarios, for example, issuing instruction and warning broadcasts as well. To give you a slightly better overview of the product itself, for those that are unfamiliar with it, of course, it is great because it is very portable, weighing under 1 kilogram. You can imagine it is quite user-friendly and quite easy to carry around for an end user to operate. Also responsiveness, it is ready to fly in under 1 minute. Operator will just ensure that your battery is charged, ensure that you have a safe takeoff and landing area, and you are on your way. The key features that come with this drone are, of course, the speaker that I mentioned earlier, which I've tested myself in the field, and it has been effective in a practical scenario rather than theoretical from to about 70 to 80 meters away, you can clearly hear instructions. So it is quite effective. Of course, the spotlight that I showed you earlier as well. This is useful for illuminating objects or persons that are in a poorly lit area. A beacon comes with the drone as well. This mainly is for situational awareness for day or night operations. An intelligent battery charger or battery charging hub that is able to charge 4 batteries simultaneously, obviously to limit time on the ground. And moving over to what I am recently referring to as the star of the moment in the drone market, the M300 game-changing platform. And I will be going into some key features that justify why we are calling it that. Given its size, it is also a relatively user-friendly drone, also able to be deployed in a short amount of time. You can see on that short animation that the arms fold in when you are not using the drone. You also see in front there is a single downward gimbal. This drone is able to operate with a single downward gimbal, a dual downward gimbal, as well as a single upward gimbal. What you see in front there are some forward vision sensors and a first-person view camera. Carrying on with the introduction of the M300 and its associated H20 series, we have stated there that it is a new standard for the commercial drone industry. And like I said, we will justify that with highlighting some of its key features in terms of superior performance, safety and reliability, advanced intelligence, flexibility and openness. And starting off with superior performance, in the first little image to the left, it has been proven that this platform offers an effective mission duration increase of 140% compared to similar drones on the market, which is quite phenomenal for your end user in terms of public order entities. Once again, limiting the amount of time the drone spends on the ground and rather having it up in its natural habitat, the air. To support this very function as well is a fast charging battery station that is capable of charging 8 batteries simultaneously, once again trying to limit the amount of time the drone is on the ground. Thanks to DJI's OcuSync enterprise transmission technology, this now is able to offer a 15-kilometer transmission range, which is quite impressive. The next slide here, you see an image of an urban environment, of course, a heavily, densely and populated city area. And moving over to the next slide, you will see its comparison with a zoomed out function on the H20 and zoomed in. There on the next slide, you can clearly see people walking on the tarmac and cars at the intersection. Quite an impressive camera, is very well utilized for large-scale urban surveillance. On the H20T, the thermal function of the camera, you of course have your thermal functionality, which is imperative for low light operations, especially at night. And it of course works with thermal technology. It senses thermal emission from people and objects. On the next clip here, you see another new key feature called the laser rangefinder on the H20 series. You are able to select a target or a target area, and it gives you the distance from the drone, and it also marks the coordinates of that particular target. Another example here, you see a ship on a body of water, and the image is taken with the wide zoom, with the wide camera correction. And in the next slide, you see it with the zoom camera. Once again, high quality, great definition for you to be able to identify the target or point of interest. And again, showcasing the thermal emission that you see from the ship as compared to the colder body of water. Great for night operations, of course. Just a brief overview again of the specifications of the H20 series. I mentioned the brand new sensors are the H20 and the H20T, the T standing for thermal. These sensors offer you a 23-time hybrid optical zoom, quite impressive, a 20 megapixel camera on the zoom camera, which for a zoom camera is game-changing. The thermal camera gives you a 640 resolution and a 30 hertz frame rate. I mentioned earlier the laser rangefinder gives you the capability of marking a target or an object of interest up to a distance of 1,200 meters and giving you that target's coordinates. This is just a brief overview of the different features and how they appear on the actual camera. Another one or two examples. In this view, you see the 4-line cursor in red having its target of interest. It is a truck, and you wouldn't be able to make that out from this perspective, but moving over to the next perspective, you see that we can clearly see the license registration and the coordinates that I mentioned earlier. Safety and reliability is, of course, key for any operations, particularly for public order policing, setting the example when it comes to safety and reliability. This particular drone gives you a 6 directional sensing and positioning sensors, effectively placing a bubble around the drone to increase safety and security of operations and decrease workload, of course. And this is effective up to a distance of 40 meters maximum. Continuing with safety and reliability, this particular drone, which is also game-changing, comes with an ingress protection of 45. And to break that down in layman terms, you can see that this has been tested in a laboratory setup with a high-pressured water jet, and it is now able to withstand 100mm rainwater. Once again, allowing the end user to operate in adverse conditions that previous generation models and comparable drones are unable to do.
Renee, sorry, Renee, if I can just interject, will you
go ahead?
Round up, we're running out of time.
I will do so. I will not go into too much detail with the health management system. This is mainly aimed at post-data analysis, like was touched on by Romeo earlier on. Advanced intelligence involve waypoints, live mission recording, AI spot check. This, of course, is for autonomous flight, decreasing workload, and you're able to utilize it for surveillance of particular areas of interest. We'll be covering quickly pinpoint, smart track, and location sharing, which are some of the features that come with this drone. As you can see, a pinpoint of 4-line cursor on a stadium here. You can accurately use the laser rangefinder to give you its distance and coordinates in real-time view. Smart track as well. Once again, being able to have the gimbal detect and follow a defined object, people, vehicles, of course, automatically, and an auto zoom function that helps you to keep the subject centered in the frame for optimal viewing. Once again, assisting your operator, taking some of the load. These drones are highly autonomous, highly intelligent, or as autonomous as intelligent as you want them to be. You're able to share this information in real time with perhaps ground teams that you're working with, or a command center, utilizing products such as DJI Flight Hub, which is intended for such operations. Helping, drawing close to the end here, helping with decrease of workload and increase of information for your operator, you have an artificial horizon and flight path vector. It shows your flight speed in real time as well, wind speed and direction, vertical obstacle bar, relative altitude, vertical speed, and absolute altitude. Advanced operator mode is key, will be key for training and, of course, decreasing workload, essentially placing one individual in charge of flying the actual unit and another in terms of to collect aerial data that can be used for immediate analysis or post-processing analysis. Lastly, the flexibility and openness of the aircraft. It is compatible with current camera in the DJI enterprise range, cameras rather, the Z30, which is an optical zoom camera, the XT2, which is also a thermal and a visible light sensor, and the XTS, and of course the H20 series. Here you see it in a triple gimbal support, which is also unmatched for any drone of its kind on the market. To the left, you see the H20 camera. To the right, you see a spotlight, third-party payload, and on top you have the thermal camera. Lastly, the specifications, which will be made available to you upon request as well. Just one keynote I want to focus on there is the 55-minute flight time, maximum flight time, the service ceiling of 7,000 meters above sea level. You never need to go that high in a practical scenario, but the drone can do that. And we have covered the H20 series as well. And we have a flight time versus payload curve that gives your operator understanding of how much endurance he can get. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My details again in the bottom right-hand corner. Our marketing team will send out these details as well, and myself and my team will gladly answer any technical or operational questions that you might have.
Renee, thank you so much. And I can see I can see why you are so passionate about the drone industry. However, we must agree that the implementation and integration of the drone technology is probably 10% technical and 90% regulatory. In our webinar last month, you guys wanted to know where is the CAA. We have them in the room today. However, I'm going to take a completely different tack today and look at this at the soft side of technology, and also with a focus on what is possible, because CAA is here. It's going to tell us what is possible. It's so well and good to come up with this nice technology, but regulations at the end of the day, they rule the day. I'm going to bring in my 4 other panelists today. Firstly is Brigadier Dr. Simon Mahlang, who joined SAPS in 1990 and is a section head at Air Wings, which is a division of SAPS, aviation section. So when you see that chopper, that is SAPS, and SAPS is in a compliance on civil aviation regulations from an airborne law enforcement perspective. He also holds a PhD in border security control and has published an article called Challenges of South African Police and Other Agencies on Land Border Security and Control. He's also a part-time academic. He's an academic where he supervises masters and doctoral students at Tshwane University of Technology. My next panelist is Dr. Sumari Road, the chairperson of the Silicon Cape, an initiative which is Africa's largest and most productive technology entrepreneurship in the world. Silicon Cape is a slogan of Africa First. She is also an academic and a lead researcher at Tech for Good Lab, which has been established with his fellow Dr. Walter A. She has been recognized as one of the emerging researchers by the NRF. And lastly, it's Mr. Lobang Tabantu, who is actually replacing Mr. Simon Sekwabe. And I must apologize that we didn't know that Mr. Sekwabe is not going to join us. I don't want you to say we've been name dropping for us to get you here, but Lobang is here. He's one of the guys who we have in this panel. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Roth, okay? Because this industry, you are passionate. You and I have had a very long discussion on drones and issues relating to tech for good and privacy and ethics. What is your take on not only the drone industry? My other question was, is this a drone problem? The privacy, is this a drone problem, or is this a broader technology problem? What's your response to that, Dr. Roth?
I think, Victor, since you've mentioned it right at the beginning of the webinar, this really is a much broader technology consideration. It certainly isn't unique to drones. It is definitely applicable to any sort of application of any type of technology. And I would argue that perhaps we also need to start redefining what the boundaries of the term technology mean to us. And what I mean by that is that we really do need to consider things like any social, legal, and ethical considerations from the very beginning, even where we start thinking about applying or developing any type of technology. So the principles that it is essentially based on it's based on 2 separate principles that we've put together. The one is from a prof at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the principle is called collective intelligence. And it literally talks about where humankind and technology work together, and that then you get this principle of the collective, which is bigger than just, at an individual level. And then there are also the principles of ethics by design and privacy by design. And what we mean by that is embedded even in our thinking when we think of how to implement technologies are these principles, so that it's not an afterthought. It's not where we find ourselves in situations where we're implementing technology and we then find that we have not considered a whole host of things, and suddenly either our implementation is brought to a grinding halt, or we find ourselves in positions where we are actually in contravention with whether it's human rights acts. We've also seen that there are even humanitarian codes of conduct for UAVs. So let me just summarize it, Victor, to answer that in a short form. No, this is not unique to drones. This is a much bigger discussion in terms of technology.
Thank you very much. I'm still going to come back to you, and because the issue of privacy, it's something that is going to block what we want to do. The technology, there's no doubt the technology can work, but we just want to get to the points about what stands in the way of this technology. Brigadier Mahlangu, SAPS, obviously, you've seen what drones can do. You guys are also in the process of implementing a drone program within SAPS. Where are we on this, and how do you see this being accepted within the community? And what is your strategy to make sure that we don't start something that's going to be blocked by human rights groups? Brigadier?
Thank you, Victor, and let me greet all the panelists and also the audience listening. Look, to go straight to your answer in terms of our drone integration within our fleet or within our operations, I think we are at an advanced stage with that project. As I indicated previously, that in no time we will obviously getting into the industry and see what is available. You'll recall that some time ago we went out for an RFI. We did our specification. Obviously, we have done with all the policy matters to start finalizing that program. But coming on the issue of us not starting something with later on will be challenged. I think we should. I should indicate to the panelists and to everybody that we draw our mandate from Section 205 of the Constitution. And I think there are about 4 broad objectives that the Constitution provides for us as the South African Police Service. One, obviously, is to prevent, combat, and investigate crime. But critical to that is to maintain public order, protect and secure the inhabitants of the Republic and their property, and also obviously uphold and enforce the law. Now, obviously, we subscribe also to the Constitution, and that takes us to one of the critical values that we subscribe as the South African Police Service, which is the protecting of everyone's rights and be impartial, respectful, and open and accountable to the community. So whatever we do, we ensure that we are always accountable to the community, but obviously we respect and protect everybody's right. And I think also critical to our values, Victor, is that we want to use the powers given to us in a responsible way. So we're not just an organization that will go out there without considering the rights of our citizens, because the citizens actually, they are our clients. You know, in everything that we do, be it the surveillance of criminals or whatever, we're to go through a judicial process. So we're to apply through the judge, and the judge will give us that particular privilege and right to do that. So we don't just go clandestinely and do things which actually are unlawful. So I just want to emphasize that part, that infringing on one's privacy, it's obviously a criminal offense, which in that case we had to deal with it as the South African Police Service. So in summary, that's what we stand for.
Brigadier, a quick one. Are you saying SAPS is going to get a general waiver from the Civil Aviation Authority and all on sundry, or you're going to be getting an ad hoc warrant? Because for you to be able to do surveillance and all of that, you probably might need a warrant. Are you going to be getting a general waiver or just a warrant? Mr. David Likote is laughing. Probably, I'll get you. Yes, Brigadier.
Yeah, let me clarify that point. The Civil Aviation Authority has nothing to do with our operations. However, in terms of us complying with certain aspects of their regulations, that will do. So even currently with what you are doing with our main aircraft, they don't regulate us in terms of how do we operate. So on that aspect, we wouldn't need any warrant from them to do our work. But as I'm saying, in all our operations, be it operations that are covered, those operations are done in a lawful manner. In other words, will apply through a judge to do that. But in case of we want to do a search, there are instances where the Criminal Procedure Act provides us with the powers to search or to arrest without a warrant. Don't worry, I'm just trying to get, because I've lost my cell phone mic as I'm trying to put the microphones. But as I've said, for us to do that, the Criminal Procedure Act will give us certain powers to do that, be it the arrest, be it the search, be it the surveillance. But obviously, as I said, with the introduction of drones, there's no way that we're just going to willy-nilly infringe on people's rights to that. No, we're still going to do it within the bounds of the law.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Lekota, you wanted to comment on that? Is it something that has been an issue on your side?
Yeah, thank you very much, Program Director. I think Brigadier has alluded much more. I think with us, remember, we are also regulated, guided by the South African Police Act. We will be engaging with the South African Civil Aviation Authority in conjunction with the Transport Education Training Authority to help us so that we can get our ROC and also start training our people. With the police, with the South African police, is completely different because they are protected. Yes, we're using Criminal Procedure Act, but we don't have investigating powers. They do have investigative powers. What we are going to do, we will engage our partners, including our government agencies, to speed up the process because we do need this technology.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Where's my CAA? Where is the Civil Aviation Authority? Mr. Tabansu, you're hiding somewhere. Are you there, sir?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you are here. Okay, great, great. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Lobang Tabansu from the Civil Aviation Authority, responsible on matters of safety. One of the things that CAA is their number one objective is aviation safety. And Mr. Tabansu is an expert in that space. If you can just tell us, just tell us what stands in the way of a city-wide drone program by the city of Johannesburg or nationwide from SAPS. What are the key considerations that must be adhered to? But I also wanted to comment on Brigadier's point about your regulations over SAPS. Over to you, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. I think I'll start with Brigadier. And I think it's a breath of fresh air to come across those that knows and their responsibility and the responsibilities of others over them. He's 100% right. The only responsibility we have in terms of aircraft that are operated by the SAPS is only the airworthiness part. We register them, we issue airworthiness approvals, which is the certificate of airworthiness, but we do not direct their operations. Our responsibility to make sure is to keep stock for them, to count the stock, how many aircraft they have. That is of course, it is just it's an arrangement, and I would like to engage with Brigadier further because I am currently in a project with Presidency at Mahlamba Dlovu on the use of drones in terms of the security cluster. So I will engage him further because I've got deliverables by end of this month to the Presidency on drones. But we will take that further. But in terms of you said citywide using drones. I think it's not just what the CAA can just tell you that citywide how to use drones. It is not for us to determine citywide. Citywide, you still have to hone it down to details. Who in the city is using that drones? Because the who part, if you answer the who part, determines what approval process that that individual or entity requires, what so until you answer that, I'm able, if it's an individual, right, that need to do that, we do not have, right now, we don't authorize individuals to be flying within the cities, all right? But if it is a municipality that will come across and says, no, I need to go and use the drones and so forth. We do have the ROC, that is, I see Mr. Lekota is aware. There is a non-profit, that one that we use for non-profit organization, the one that does not require the air service license, if it is done by one of the state entities, to be able to use the drones the way they will want to. But that will depend on their own business model, on what they will need to do. So our limitations to them, it will be determined on what they want to do and what they have demonstrated and what the capacity and capability they have within their systems. Do they have the necessary pilots to be able to discharge their mission? That's up to them. So I think further, Mr. Lekota will also discuss further beyond this meeting on that one.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Tibbons. I'm going to go back to DJI, okay? I spoke about the executive order that President Trump wants to sign into law, and there's also the American Security Drone Act of 2019, and the remote ID controversy that is raging in the US, and the whole issue about data and data security. And after you, I'm going to go back to Dr. Roth. But what I just want to understand is, because if you look at Apple, there was a time when they were subpoenaed by the FBI to surrender the phone data of the Boston bomber. And Apple flatly refused. They said, we not do that. And FBI obviously got hold of that information via a hacker. Okay. Now, there's always this accusation that Chinese drones are feeding data, would feed data to the Chinese government. What data does DJI collect? Because if that is the case, I think in Africa, we also have to worry. What data does DJI collect, and what does it do with that data? If you could please talk us through that, and why is Uncle Sam so up and about Chinese drones, and also talk about the remote ID. And we'll go back to Mr. Lobang Tabansu, because the remote ID, I think he is probably watching the debates around it. Over to you, Mr. Desha.
Thank you, Victor. That's a very, very good question, or actually several very good questions. And I'm trying to be as short as possible. Obviously, that's a very big topic, but let's talk about data security first. The drone is a data collection device, as I mentioned before, and the operator of the drone is in full control of his or her data. So the way it works, if you take a picture, if you take a video, that is stored on the SD card on the drone. Now, there are flight records that are also being saved. So let's say I'm flying here in San Jose today, I'm flying around the building. That flight is now stored on my smart device that I use to control the drone. If I have two drones and I want to sync those two different archives of all of my past flights into one, I can sync that information to an AWS server here in the United States. Now, this is because I'm operating in the United States. If we're operating in Europe, it goes to an AWS server in Europe. So that both my flight records from my two different drones or my two different devices are synced together in one. That's the only data that is being synced or given to the AWS server. If the operator doesn't do anything, there's no data being transmitted. The drone doesn't have a LTE or 4G or 5G or any backdoor technology that just miraculously would submit data to China or any other place. So we have to be very clear about this. And we have done third-party evaluations of that, of the app, of the drone, of the hardware, and they have all come back clean. These continuous attacks on DJI and Chinese-made drones are of geopolitical nature. You do not see those happening in Europe or other places. And we have to be very, very careful, because if we go down this path of just disallowing Chinese-made drones or drones with Chinese components, it will kill the market here in the United States, because there is no other drone that comes close to DJI. And I wish we had competition, because competition is good and healthy for the market. But even our American manufactured drones have Chinese components. So it's a much, much more complex environment than just saying, all right, Chinese drones, they spy, they're bad, therefore we have to delete and cancel everything that's Chinese made. Because if we go down that road, your cell phone, your iPad, your TV, all your other smart gadgets that a public safety entity may be utilizing has to follow suit. And that's very dangerous. So we continuously improve on the data security, because that's obviously very, very important. We do not make technology for military purposes. We make technology for peaceful purposes, and therefore our current standards doesn't meet the requirements of a defense entity like the Army or the Navy. And that's not our target market. In regards to remote ID, we are a big supporter of remote ID because it provides accountability to the operator. It's just like you driving a vehicle and you have a license plate on the back of your vehicle. If you're speeding and you get caught, and you have the enforcement agency has a way to track you as the operator of that vehicle, then you have to be accountable for it. Similarly, remote ID is an electronic license plate, so to speak, that sends information to somebody that has the authority to pick up that information and validate that, yes, Romeo is a licensed drone operator. The drone is registered. He may be flying in controlled airspace, but he has a waiver to do so. Therefore, he's good to go. That is important for the entire industry to create accountability and transparency.
Thank you so much. You've been very, very open. And Dr. Roth, I'm going to come back to you as far as the issue of data is concerned. The problem that we have here in Africa, I sat one day listening to the CEO of Terra Drone, a Japanese drone company, okay? When he was saying in CNN, he says, I could be sitting in my office in Tokyo, a drone could be collecting data in an agricultural field in Africa, and that data is going to come to me for me to process. Here we are, Africa exports minerals, but now we are exporting data that is coming back to us as improved products. What's your comment on that? Because I know for a fact that BMW in Munich is collecting data on your car as you drive it because for warranty purposes. Okay, so what's your comment on that, Dr. Roth, and how should we handle this part?
So to me, part of it is a legislative issue. So, and let's just go to the core principle, which is the one of privacy. So in terms of our constitution, section 14 speaks about our right to privacy. It is slightly limited though, so proving infringements is often difficult. So what we then developed was what is now known as the POPI Act, so the Protection of Personal Information. Some people also call it the PAPIA Act, so the Protection of Personal Information Act. Now, this is essentially South Africa's data protection bill, which was set to take effect from 1 April 2020, so of this year, but it was unfortunately delayed because of the coronavirus outbreak and no new data has been set yet. And essentially, the POPI Act will deal with what we call cross-border data transfer. So it should, in essence, then start dealing with issues regarding our data, being used by foreign entities. The reality is it's already happening. So the questions one needs to ask is, how can we retrospectively then retrofit the Act, if one even can? But I think in a nutshell, it comes to also education regarding, you know, your rights in terms of privacy. And I think it talks to one of the 5 E's of the Tech for Good movement, which speaks about the fact that we also need to educate. And what I mean by educate is that there's a much bigger, broader public awareness that needs to happen. I mean, the reality is the use of drones for public safety is controversial because people are scared. They don't necessarily understand the implications. And, you know, I hear what the Brigadier is saying, and I hear what Mr. Lekota is saying, and I understand that, you know, it sounds as if it is being done in a responsible manner, but you're still not addressing the fear aspect that comes from not being aware. So I think there are 2 things here. It's the privacy, so the legislative aspect of privacy, not just in South Africa, but on the continent. And then also the educational aspects of empowering people to understand not only what are their rights, but what are the actual implications of technology. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Roth. I'm going to go back to the Brigadier. Brigadier, you heard Mr. Dersher saying, look, they're not into the military space, okay? And a drone, they're into the civilian commercial drones. However, technology depends on whose hands it is. It could be a tool, it could be a weapon, okay? Is SAPS not worried about drones at some point from a weapons control point of view? Have they had any discussion around that issue? Brigadier? You are muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me say, yes, we are aware of that. It's something that we constantly discuss within the security cluster. But obviously, I think with the introduction of the drones at some stage, especially in the early stages, what was more of a challenge was anti-drone detection or defense, which was a bit of a concern initially. But that matter, I think it has been addressed now. There are a couple of technology to deal with that, and therefore we are on par of what is happening. Our security agencies are aware, and I think they are dealing the matter. So we're not worried. I mean, we had a number of major events that we hosted as a country. Obviously, we took cognizance of such threats, which can happen. So we've been on the ground from the intelligence community, from the security aspect of it. So we quite aware. I don't want to give much in terms of what we're doing, but I think we quite aware, and then I think South Africans, they are in the safe hands.
Okay, thank you very much, Brigadier. I think we're just going to now move into the summarization stage, and if my panelists could look at that Q&A column, because there's some questions that they would want to answer in their closing remarks. And on this note, I'm just going to start with Mr. Lekota. If you could just frame in 60 seconds your closing remarks as far as JMPD. No. In fact, you're going to speak last, sir. Sorry, you're going to speak last. I just want to get at everybody else to frame your closing remarks in 60 seconds. Look at some of those questions. By the way, we're not going to be able to answer all the questions, but we will try as much as possible to respond to you. We'll send this whole file of questions to all the panelists and the speakers. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Tabansu. As far as the Civil Aviation Authority is concerned on this topic, I know you only respond when matters are brought up to you, okay? But what is it that CAA role can play to make sure that we get drones into policing? Mr. Tabansu?
We get drone into, I didn't get the last part.
Into public order policing, or you just going to wait for to be approached by the relevant authorities. Where does CAA stand on this matter? From a project?
The first point that I'll raise is that CAA is the regulator, right? So we have to regulate activities when they happen, but we do not embark into the activities themselves. So of course we have to assist those that come to the CAA and want the necessary approvals. That's primarily our role. But in terms of drone policing, and our role is that that's what I was happy and glad when Brigadier Mahlangu was raising the point, because Brigadier Mahlangu as a PS, they do not have to wait for the CAA. They can do whatever they do. But there are still other gaps that when it comes to drone and other aircraft that we'll need to discuss further outside this meeting. But our role, like in any other activities, CAA is responsible for regulation and administering those regulations and ensure that those that want to participate in any activities, they continue to comply to do so.
Yeah. And
I have seen one question on one day what was raised was that one individual raised that CAA is hampering progress because of the inability of the CAA to issue ROCs. It takes 2 years waiting period. I didn't expect to see such a comment today, especially in 2020. That was maybe in 2017. I was going to agree with that individual. We have way past that. If such an individual is still affected, he can send that directly to me now or tomorrow, and we get that sorted. We are no longer working that way. We have passed long time ago. He can just consult with us. We are here open and to consult with anybody who wants to embark on that. The only thing that hampers is not primarily because of CAA. I think it's always easy to blame the authorities and the government entity. You know, when you want to embark into the drone, please study the law. The law are there, are published on the website. You can study the law while you are sitting in the comfort of your home and be able to consult with us when at least you have seen what the law says. It's easy to blame the law. There's a law when you take the driver's license. There's a law when you bank money. There's law everywhere. So let's not say the law is the problem, but perhaps the knowledge of the law, let's consider that. Thank you.
Mr. Tabantu, one issue that is one of the questions here from JKX team. What is CAA doing about illegal drones? Okay, because the illegal drones are a threat to our industry. Okay, because the majority of drones that are being flown out there, they're being flown with pilots who are not registered. What is CAA doing? In just 2 seconds.
Okay. Unlike Brigadier Mahlangu, CAA, we do not have the police out there that go around and search those that are doing wrong. We rely on the industry or the public reporting that to the CAA through our confidential lines. And we have had a lot of those illegal operators that has been reported, and we have a fully capacitated enforcement department that has dealt with a lot of this. Please report the illegal drones to us. You go to our website and you go to our anonymous line and you detail everything, then we are able to deal with those illegal operators out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tabantu. Brigadier, you and I have spoken about illegal drones. Just in half a minute, can you just also include it in your closing remarks, please? You are muted, Brigadier. You are muted.
Always I keep on being muted. I think this my device is sometimes failing me. Illegal drones. I think illegal drones, I'm not sure under which context, but because it can mean different things. But maybe let me try and help the person who has put this question. Now, a drone, if a drone is illegal, then simply means the operator didn't apply and get the the correct or the required permission or certificate from the CAA. Now, one, it means that person is actually contravening the CAA regulation. That's one part, because for you to, especially for a commercial drone, for you to operate a commercial drone, obviously you need to have an ROC, obviously with a detailed operations manual that details how are you going to conduct your operation. That would have been granted by CAA. Then in that instance, if you have violated those requirements from CAA, from a regulatory point of view, then CAA would actually deal with that matter, like they will deal in case of any manned aircraft. Now, let's talk to illegal in the sense of a crime committed. If a crime has been committed, then that's where the South African Police Service come into, obviously, to investigate and ensure that that investigation end up in court or for a prosecution, obviously based either on the criminality of the matter. So that could be one or two of the issues.
Thank you.
If I had to sum like that, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brigadier. Dr. Roth, what are your closing remarks?
Thank you, Victor. I think for me, it really, at its essence, is all about that everyone should have a voice and participation in the evolution of any type of new technology, drones included. And when I say a voice and participation, I mean this includes government, business, academia, media, and especially the public. I think exclusion can lead to unintended and harmful consequences. And I'd like to encourage us all to think back to our African value system of Ubuntu, which speaks to I am because we are. And this really should be used as a parameter by all entities, again, including government, business, academia, and in engaging the public. And that we embrace a commitment to compromise and consultation and coexistence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roth. Mr. Desher, I'm going to ask you to make your closing remarks. You've probably seen some of the questions. If you could just put it all together, and if I may just ask all my audience, the people who are still there, to please indulge us another 3 minutes, because we're going to close now. Sorry to take more of your time, but Mr. Desher, if you could just try and summarize it, and if you could please take time, because we're not going to get a chance to get a DJI speaker to speak on matters like this, even some of the controversial ones. Over to you, sir.
Absolutely, thank you, Victor. And I absolutely second what Dr. Root just said. It is imperative that any new technology is being properly reviewed, assessed, and utilized. And transparency is important not only from us as a manufacturer, but then also from the end users, especially in public safety. Here in the United States, there's a big difference when a firefighter flies a drone around a fire incident. The public is happy. If a police officer flies a drone around a criminal scene, the public is not as happy. And that is very important to understand, and therefore transparency is a key element in all of this. Reality also is that we are very new in this drone industry and drone age. While drones for hobbyists have been around for quite some time, we're now seeing them in more commercial applications, such as public safety, mining, infrastructure, inspection, construction, areas where up until now we hadn't really seen drones. So it is happening. And that also means that regulatory environments have to be set in place, because it's no secret that regulations are always behind in regards to technology. Technology moves much, much faster. But the advice that I can give, and not being a regulator, is you've got to try to stay ahead of it as much as you can, because just by saying, no, it's not allowed, people will still do it. And it's this wave that comes at you. And if certain things are not implemented, it will not only have a direct impact on the regulatory environment, but society. People will do it even though it may not be allowed. That's just nature of humans, unfortunately. And on the flip side, criminals are very keen on utilizing technologies to help their cause. So we gotta try as an industry, as a society, and as a regulatory body, gotta try to stay up and make the utilization of new technologies available. It will happen. That boat, that ship has left the port. So there's no holding back at this point. It's a challenge. That's why these type of environments, these type of discussions from very different perspectives are extremely important. And I'm looking at the attendees here. They also are asking great questions and are voicing their opinions. That is the healthy way of doing this. Knee-jerking regulations don't help. Fear is important to acknowledge, but education is the tool to help ease some of these fears, and proper research and validated data are the key to success. And I applaud all of you for your efforts. When I was in Johannesburg in December, and I was at a conference about drone usage, I left excited because I could see the excitement of people, and I could see how they are already utilizing drones in ways that a few years ago were not done. So South Africa is definitely in a good spot, and if the regulatory body catches up just a little more, I think there's gonna be a lot of beneficial use cases that come from it. It will help lives, it will help save lives, it will make jobs easier. And reality also is the drone industry is creating jobs, and right now jobs are needed. So thank you all for having me. Thank you for being so active, for sharing your views and experiences, and I hope you all stay safe during these trying times, and I cannot wait to come back to South Africa and have more of your beautiful wine.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Likota, Awivalege, and your closing remarks, sir. You are muted. Yeah, good.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Program Director. It has been a good session. I think one need to appreciate the effort that you have introduced this topic. As Johannesburg, we're looking forward, particularly the JMPD, and also in the future we'll invite our colleague EMS, because we are also thinking that we can share as public safety. One of the aspects that we are looking at is to collaborate with everyone that is in there. Thank you, panelists, for participating. We are new in the industry. We're seeing the drone as a new technology to enhance our services so that we can keep crime. Especially if we work together. You're right, Dr. Ruud, transparency. It will assist us to reduce and also improve our economy within the local space. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. And we are 13 minutes over time. And Renee, I know I didn't give you time, but you made an awesome presentation. And by the way, on the DroneCon website, we're going to post that presentation. And by the way, this is still the decade of the drone. And we just believe that the law enforcement, the regulator, the industry, the rights groups are going to be with us when we build this industry, because you cannot stop a technology whose time has come. On this note, may I take this opportunity to thank my panelists, to thank you all out there and say, stay safe. And I can't forget Candice from DroneCon, who's working for us tirelessly, who has put this thing together. After this, we're gonna send you all a recording. And in addition to recording, and also respond to all these questions that you guys have. We owe it to you to respond, even if it's a no comment, but there's no comment here. We are going to respond to all of you. And thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you.